Recently, in our nation, over the course of the last several months, there has been a massive public outcry over the fact that Netflix will be taking The Office off of their site. See, I told you. Point proven. Or, and just here in the last couple of weeks, the fact that the internet almost broke just as the cast of Friends came out and said, hey, we're gonna get the gang back together. We're celebrating 25 years, and so we're gonna have one special episode to memorialize the fact that Friends happened here coming up in the near future, right? Like that is the way that we cherish television, that we look at these stories and we love them, not just because they're entertaining, even though they are entertaining, but we love these stories because we connect to the characters, like we grow attached to them personally. We find that as we watch these stories unfold, the lessons they learn become relevant for our own lives, and truthfully, we identify even in real life in their fictionalized circumstances. That's why we love watching television. That's why we binge. And so in my life, I'll admit, there are two shows that I have actually binge watched. The first was about a year ago. I binge watched Stranger Things. Any Stranger Things fans? Yeah. It's amazing. Go check it out. But the other one happened back in 2011. It was my sophomore year of college, and I was not prepared for it. I was not planning, but I found that I got deeply invested, like emotionally invested, in Friday Night Lights. Yep. My best friend and I, we would show up, and it felt like all day, every day, for countless hours, we would sit in his living room. We would unbox our lanes. We would appoint ourselves the freedom to not say two words to one another because we were not there to talk to each other. I was not there to hang out with him. I was there to watch Coach Eric Taylor lead the Dillon Panthers, the high school football immortality. That's what I was doing. I was hooked. I was so invested. I saw the lives of these angsty high school teenagers, and I saw myself in them, right? Like as I watched them, I saw them go through friendship and hardship and heartbreak, and I felt everything they felt. Now, why do I tell you that? Because there was one moment in Friday Night Lights that I think is relevant for our night tonight. There was one memory that I have of the show, and it was in the season finale at the end of season 1. Here the Dillon Panthers are. Over the course of the season, they have been working to arrive at this point, and they finally make it. They are at the state championship. And it is halftime, and they are outmanned and outmatched. They are in the face of terribly adverse circumstances. And as they there on one knee, they look up at their coach, at their leader, knowing that though we may be bruised, broken, and battered, Coach Eric Taylor can show us the way to success. Even in the face of the harshest circumstance, he can show us the path to victory. And so as Eric Taylor stands there in front of his Dillon Panthers, knowing well the circumstances of their situation and knowing well the weight of the world's expectations outside of that room, he looks at them and he doesn't remind them of the game plan and the strategy that he scripted for this game. He doesn't remind them of their opponent's vulnerabilities. What he does instead is he looks at them and he reminds them who they are. He says to them, he quotes this, he says, "In life, every man will lose a battle, but what makes him a man is that in the midst of that battle, he doesn't lose himself. That with clear eyes and full heart, that man can't lose." And they go out and they win state, right? So what does that mean exactly? What is he communicating to them in that moment? What he is telling them is that, hey, your success, it will not be determined by the outcome of that scoreboard, but it will be determined by the outcome of your character. That if you have clarity of mind and you have conviction of heart, it is impossible for you to fail because the game is no longer the measure of success. It's you in yourself. So why do we bring that up? Why is that important for us? Because I think tonight, what Coach Taylor said in that moment is actually relevant for all of us, that here in this room, you feel like you might be in the midst of your own state championship, right? That just as those Dillon Panthers were at a defining moment in their year, you're here and you're like, man, this feels like a defining moment. That everything before college, every decision you made leading up to this moment has ultimately brought you here. And that every decision you make while you're here at Texas A&M is what? It's affecting your future. This is a massive 4 years. This is a defining moment in your life. And you feel the pressure. It's like, man, I can't lose. Like, I've got to win. I've got to succeed. Too much is riding on the 4 years I have here at Texas A&M. In fact, that's why you came to A&M, right? Like, it's inherent within the desires of man that we want success, we want satisfaction, and we want significance. And so as you surveyed the land of where you could go to college, you saw Texas A&M and you thought to yourself, man, that is the best school possible, a whoop, that could put me in the best position possible to get the degree I want, make the friends I want, find the guy or girl I want, so that way I can get the internship I want, to get the job that I want, that has the salary I want. That way I can one day get married and I can have the kids that I probably should want all before retiring, right? That's why you came here, because you have visions of what you want to achieve in life. That's why you come to school. You have a vision for what's ahead. And by God, if anybody is gonna keep you from reaching that goal, you are, in one word, achievers. You want, in one word, to succeed. And the Barna Group backs this up. They actually say, your generation is the most success-oriented generation in history. According to their study, the two biggest qualities that your generation identified with, that you yourself defined yourself by, is we want to be known for a desire to professionally achieve and have time to enjoy hobbies and free time. That's what you wanted to be known for. What does that tell us about you in specific? It tells us that your desire at your very core is to be fundamentally connected to success and satisfaction, that you want to achieve, right? You want high achievement and you want high enjoyment, that is what you want in life. And it says here that 60% of your generation, so just think about this room, over half of this room, you want to follow your dreams and achieve them all before the age of 30, while also graduating college, starting your career, and becoming financially independent. Your parents thank you. You see, you want to achieve in every sense of the word. You want to succeed. Now, I'm not standing here tonight telling you that this desire to succeed is bad. In fact, I think it's biblical. Like, I think your desire to succeed is biblical. I think it's right that as I look at my life, as I take inventory of the skills and the talents that God has given me, I should leverage those for maximum effect. That's a biblical principle. But as we think about it, the question tonight isn't, is it wrong to succeed in life? The question instead is, how do we succeed in life? And to answer that question, we're actually gonna be in the book of Proverbs. So if you have your Bibles, you can pull them out. Turn to the book of Proverbs. We're gonna be in chapter 3. Now, if anybody knows a thing or two about achievement, it would be the author of the book of Proverbs. You see, the author of the book of Proverbs is none other than King Solomon. King Solomon is the son of King David. He is the third and last king of the United Kingdom of Israel. And he is widely considered by most historians and theologians to be one of, if not the wisest, wealthiest, and highest achieving people in world history. So if anybody is gonna instruct us tonight on what it looks like to succeed, how to succeed, he's the guy. And he'll start by telling us this, that first, we succeed by committing to God our whole heart. It says in Proverbs 3, starting in verse 1, it says, "My son, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments. For length of days and years of life and peace they will add to you. Let not steadfast love and faithfulness forsake you. Bind them around your neck, write them on the tablet of your heart, so you will find favor and good success in the sight of God and man." So right out of the gate, Solomon is writing to his son, and he tells his son, hey, listen, son, there's a way to succeed in life. But in order to do that, in order to succeed, in order to win at whatever's at hand, there's a couple of things you need to do first. The first is you need to remember my teaching. So for us, that begs the question, like, Solomon, what did you teach your son? Like, tell us. We need to know because we want to succeed. And it says this in Proverbs 2. It tells us, he says, "My son, if you receive my words and treasure up my commandments with you, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding." He is telling him, hey, don't forget that what you need in life is wisdom. You need the knowledge to navigate the complexities of life to arrive at the best possible ends. That's what he's saying. So how do we get wisdom? The book of James tells us. It says that if any lacks wisdom, he need only ask God, because God gives freely to all who ask. And so that is where we get it. We get wisdom from the Lord. He's the one who's designed it. He's the one that's created it. And he's the one that has woven it into the fabric of his creation. He has picked out a knowledge that is specifically helpful for us to make the right versus the wrong decisions and to ensure that our life is more free of pain than it would be otherwise. And so we see Solomon here in this moment looking at his son, and he's saying, hey, you need to remember my teaching. But he doesn't stop there. He goes on. He says, you don't just need to remember my teaching. You also need to let your heart keep my commandments. So that's really interesting. He's telling his son, he's saying, hey, your heart, it has a natural inclination to cling to the things of God's truth. That you, right, let your heart wants to go after that. Your heart wants to go after the Lord. You just don't need to interfere with it. You need to step aside and let your heart align with the one who has created it. And he says so in Ecclesiastes 3, verse 11. He says this, he says, he has made, this is talking about God, he has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity into the heart of man. So I was recently reading a 3-year-long study out of Oxford University. And what that study concluded was this exact same idea, that humanity is predisposed to a belief in God. Not necessarily our God, but just to belief in the supernatural, belief into something spiritual, that it is not uncommon in humanity, right? That all of us, we have a sense for a higher power. That it's not just a belief in the higher power that some of us have, but it's something that is innate within all of us. And then Andrew Newberg, he's an American neuroscientist. He specializes in this topic specifically, and he says, religious experience satisfies 2 of the most basic functions of the brain. Self-maintenance, which is how do I take care of myself, and self-transcendence, how do I succeed and become more than I am? Those questions should sound familiar because those are the questions we're asking tonight, right? How do I secure myself? How do I succeed? How do I find significance? And Solomon is looking at his son and he's saying, hey, it is natural for your heart to instinctively want to go to God. And so you need to let it. You don't need to interfere with it. Let it align with the one who has created it. Let it live. Let it be as it was intended to be. Step into your created intent. If you do, you'll receive length of days, years of life, and peace. That sounds pretty good, right? So he continues. He says in verse 3, he says, let not steadfast love and faithfulness forsake you. Bind them around your neck and write them on the tablet of your heart. What does that mean exactly? It means that we have to be careful to never let faithfulness run out on us. Now, that begs the question, like, how is that even possible? Like, if he just told me, like, hey, I have an inclination in my heart to go to God, why do I need to worry about being faithful? Well, the truth is, your heart has 2 inclinations. It does. It has a natural desire to go after God, but it also has a natural desire to come after itself. That we are both drawn to the Lord and we are selfish at heart. That we are torn down the middle. That we're not united, we're divided. And so how do we take care of this? What do we do to account for it? It says that we bind faithfulness to ourselves. What does that word bind mean exactly? That word bind means to take faithfulness and to tether it, to fasten it to yourself in such a way that it becomes a part of you. That it isn't just something you carry, it's something that you are, that you've bound it to your very being. So there's a movie called A Knight's Tale. I don't know if you've seen it, it's a little bit older, but in this movie, the main actor, Heath Ledger, he plays the role of a young, ambitious, passionate kid named William Thatcher. This guy is just like you, except he lives in 14th century Europe. And what we find over the course of this movie is that William Thatcher, though he is born of a difficult background, though he is of common blood, wants to achieve something that most people would say is unattainable. He wants to become a knight. And so over the course of the film, as we follow William Thatcher, we find that William, he finds friends, he makes enemies, he grows and develops in his person, and then ultimately he learns different skills, one of which is jousting, right? Like medieval times, I ride on a horse and I'm trying to knock another guy off of his horse. Like that's what's happening. And he learns how to do this really well, so well to the point that eventually at the end of the movie, he is invited to come to London for the World Championship. Right? And so here he is in the climactic scene of the movie, and as he prepares to square off in the finals against his arch rival, Count Adhemar, he rides in and is eventually struck a fatal blow, a blow that injures him so severely that he can't even hold his lance. And so what does he do? He looks at his friend, he looks at his squire named Wat, and he says, Wat, you take that lance and you lash it to me on. You lash it to me. You tie it to my arm. I can't hold it. I can't grip it. So what you need to do is you need to fasten that lance to my body so that it is an extension of my arm, so that it becomes the very essence of who I am. And what does he do? He rides against Count Adhemar, and he does what he would not have been able to do had he not bound that lance to himself. He defeats him. He wins the world tournament, and he is united to his love, Jocelyn. He becomes a knight. So what's the relevance of that for us? The relevance of that for us is that we too have to be willing to take up faithfulness, right? That though it may be difficult at times, we have to bind faithfulness to ourselves. Is that gonna be easy? Absolutely not. We feel it in ourselves, this pull between conflicting desires, that God, I do want to follow you. I do want to be a noble character. I do want to have an upright spirit. But I also, God, if I could just compromise this once, to get this job, to date this guy, to pass this class, then God, then everything would be okay. Then I would be able to succeed as I want to succeed. You see, we jeopardize our integrity. And it's crazy because what does Solomon go on to say? He says that if we remain faithful, if we don't jeopardize our integrity, if we remain united at heart, if we demonstrate to God our love for him through faithfulness, then we will find favor and good success in the sight of God and man. Does that mean you'll succeed however you want? No. It does mean you'll succeed at times, but it doesn't mean you'll succeed all the time. You see, that word success, it doesn't necessarily carry the idea of becoming a conqueror as much as it carries the idea of becoming a man or woman of high character. That's the idea. And so what God is saying in this moment is, hey, if you will remain faithful to me, you will find favor and approvability, a good reputation. You will be of strong moral standing, of high character, and both I and the people around you will approve of it. That ultimately you'll be regarded as a success for what matters most, not what you do, but who you are. But that only happens if we commit to God our whole heart. But that's not the only way we succeed. We see that we not only succeed by committing to God our whole heart, but also by submitting to God our entire life. It says in Proverbs 3, verse 5, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will make straight your paths. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord. Turn from evil. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones. Honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of all your produce. Then your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will be bursting with wine. That sounds great, but I'll be honest with you. This principle, this is going to be the hardest one I put before you tonight. Why? Because it says to trust the Lord with all your heart. But the reality for us is we don't want to trust anybody but us, right? We want to be self-reliant, that ultimately we believe we know best, that we don't want to expose ourselves, make ourselves vulnerable to the devices of anyone else, that we want to be in control of our future, of our relationships, and of our experiences. Because if I'm in control, I can manage the results and mitigate the risks. That I can have everything I want and I can avoid everything I don't. And so this passage, it puts us at a bit of an impasse. We want to trust ourselves, but Solomon is saying, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. You see, to trust in someone is to willingly take on this perspective of reliance, that I see myself as insufficient, but then also to take on a posture of dependence, that as I see myself insufficient, I'm going to make myself move into a position where I can receive help. That's what it means to trust. The word for trust in Hebrew here, it literally paints the picture of someone bowing face downward and subjecting themselves helplessly to the mercy of another authority. That's what this word means. That's how we're to trust the Lord. It's a picture of total surrender. To illustrate this, Navy SEALs, they do this incredibly well. That when Navy SEALs enter into a room and they look to clear it of enemy combatants, each operator on the team consciously makes the decision to expose some part of themselves so as to accomplish the mission at hand. You see, they walk into the room knowing that they will be vulnerable, knowing that their back will be exposed. But though their back may be exposed, someone is covering their six, that someone is looking out for them. And what does that do? It frees them up. It allows them to move forward into it allows them to move forward to clear their area of the room, not out of a spirit of fear, but out of a spirit of focus, that they're not tyrannized by what could be, but instead of what should be. That's what ultimately happens. And so what they do is, as they make themselves helpless, they ultimately make themselves strong, right? That they make themselves helpless in one sense, that I am vulnerable. But as I make myself vulnerable, I'm ultimately made strong, right? I'm more effective to accomplish the mission at hand. And that principle is true for us, that if we trust the Lord, if we willingly enter into a position of helplessness, we consequentially will become much stronger than we could ever be on our own. So does God need your help? No. It says that we don't lean on our own understanding, that we don't prop ourselves up, we don't support ourselves by way of what we perceive or what we understand of the situation or what value we could contribute. We don't do that. Instead, it says that we acknowledge him in all our ways. That word acknowledge carries the idea of an intimate knowing. Not just that I know, like, I see you, God, but instead that I'm intimately connected to him, that I know he's there. The word Lord in verse 5, that isn't just a name for God. That is the personal name of God. That is the intimate relational name of God. And so what is the Lord saying? He's saying, hey, trust in me. Do not lean on your own understanding. Acknowledge me in all your ways. What he's saying is, hey, I don't want you just to trust someone that's far off and distant. I want you to trust me, someone who's close and intimate, somebody that isn't just looking out for you because they're supposed to, but looking out for you because they love you. So do we submit to him half-heartedly? No, we don't submit to him half-heartedly. We submit to him in our lives fully. We enter in entirely, right? We give, when we trust the Lord, we trust him with all our heart, everything we have. We submit to him exclusively. That I'm not trusting anyone else, God, that I'm not looking to anyone else to provide for me. I am looking to you and to you alone. And we submit to him exhaustively in all our ways. We acknowledge him. And then what's the result? What does it say he'll do? It says that he'll make our paths straight. What's a straight path? It's the most direct route from where I am to where I should be. Will it always feel direct? Will it always feel easy or efficient? No, but we can trust the Lord. We can have confidence that that's the case. Why? Because he works all things together for good, for those that love him and have been called according to his purposes. That if you love the Lord and if you are seeking to accomplish his purposes, ultimately, you can trust that he'll look out for you, that he'll provide for you, that he will give you the straightest path possible. As it goes on, it says in verse 7 that we should not be wise in our own eyes, but we should fear the Lord. We should turn from evil. So what's he saying exactly? He's saying that we need to be realistic about who we are. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Hey, just deal honestly with yourself. And if you're going to deal honestly with yourself, then you need to deal honestly with the Lord. What do you think of yourself and what do you think of God? Think realistically about both of you. And so what I've found, maybe this is just me, but I think it might be relevant for you. I think that too often we think of ourselves too highly and we think of God too lowly. But the reality is that God is so much bigger than we think. And in turn, we are so much smaller than we think. You see, the quickest way to get a right understanding of who we are, of who you are, is to get a right understanding of who God is. That's what it means. When it says to fear the Lord, the idea there is that I see God rightly, that I see him clearly. I see him for who he is, that he's not just God with us, he is God over us, that he's not just like daddy God over here, but he is actually God Almighty, right? That he is transcendent, he is omnipotent, that he has never once, you want to talk about success? He has never once been frustrated in anything he's done. And he has never once failed. He is perfect in all his ways. He orchestrates all of creation to accomplish what he wants. He is undiluted, terrifyingly wonderful. He is mightier than you could ever imagine, and yet he is nearer than you could ever hope. That's who our God is. And what's amazing is that when we see him like this, we become like him. I tell my guys all the time, I'm like, man, if you want to pray for one thing, this is what you pray for. You ask God to help you see him as he should be seen. That you see God like he is. Because if you see God like he is, you'll find that he is more beautiful than anything else in creation. And then what happens? When you see something beautiful, you're drawn to it. You can't help but gravitate towards it. And as you're drawn into the presence of God, as you see him for more of who he is, what happens? You become like him. And you put evil away. And then ultimately, you find exactly what he promises, healing and refreshment for your life. You find life and vitality, that you'll be more full and more whole than you ever could be without him. And as the passage goes on, it says that we should also honor the Lord with our wealth. We'll be quick on this. This one's controversial. Like this one, it kind of gets under our skin a little bit. But what we need to know is that Solomon has actually already addressed this. That when he said, hey, regard God in light of all things in your life, right? And in your life, acknowledge him in every way. That included this, that meant physically, that meant professionally, that meant relationally, that meant personally, emotionally. I don't know what else I said, but financially is at the end of that, right? That he spoke indirectly and now he is speaking directly. Why does he point out wealth? Like, what's his angle? Why target our pocketbook? Because ultimately what Solomon is trying to accomplish is he's trying to point out in our life the thing that we deem as most valuable of all. Because what can money do for you? It can give you anything you want. It can give you safety, it can give you popularity, it can find you friends, it can lead you into romance, it can give you experiences, it can let you travel. I mean, it can do anything you want it to. And so when we look at God and we want to honor him with our wealth, what we're saying is, God, the very thing in life that is most valuable of all, it doesn't compare to you. What does it mean to honor someone? When we honor someone, we do two things. We ascribe to them value and we express to them value. What does that mean? It means that I see you as valuable, and then I make my life appointed to show you just how valuable you actually are. That we do that with our wealth because the Lord is worthy of honoring. Now, do we do this because of what it says in verse 10? Do we do it because then our barns will be filled with plenty and our vats will be bursting with wine? That sounds awesome. No, we don't. We don't honor God because of what we could receive. We honor God because of what we have received. Like the command here is to honor the Lord, not invest in the Lord. Like he's not a trending stock. Like he doesn't promise a good dividend. Like what he instead is, he is someone that we honor with all of our wealth, not because we want to reap the reward of prosperity. We want to reap the reward of his provision. That's what we want. That the greatest thing I can have in life is not everything that I accrue for myself, but instead, after having accrued, looking at him and saying, God, you're better. Like I would give away all of this to be with you. And so the main lesson here is that if we want to succeed in life, the path to success, it doesn't come from a spirit of ambition. Like, let me get everything I can. Let me amass for myself all of the material wealth and all of the possessions I can get. Let me feel all the significance and satisfaction I can find. No, we don't find it through a spirit of ambition. We find it through a spirit of submission. That God, even as I accrue all of this, I want to leverage all of it for you. I want to give all of it away because you are more glorious. You are more worthy. You are more valuable. That if I want to succeed, I don't need to be self-reliant. I need to be God-reliant. So last story. When I was in college, I had these grand visions of what my life would look like. Like I remember driving to College Station with two of my best friends And as we were pulling into Aggieland, I leaned over the console and I looked at them both and I was like, hey, listen, I don't know that you know this, so I wanna make sure we're clear. We are about to conquer this place. Like, we are about to make decisions in the next 4 years that leave a mark on this city. Like, we, though we may not be known, will ultimately be fully known by the time we leave. That everybody at Texas A&M is going to appreciate us for having come. I said that. I just outed myself. That sounded better before I came out here and told you. But I said that. I was full of arrogance, right? Like all these principal motivators that we're talking about, these desires for success and significance and satisfaction, those were driving me as I came to Texas A&M. But you know what I found? Like, as I've looked back on my time at A&M, what I realized is that as much as I was arrogant, I was actually just more afraid. You see, I wasn't actually seeking after significance. Man, I was running from insignificance. That I wasn't just chasing after success. I was terrified of being a failure. That yes, I did want satisfaction, but truly what I didn't want was discomfort. You know, I was motivated out of fear. I was being driven not to chase after things, but to run after things instead. And then I remember, like it was the end of my junior year. It was 3 years after I had walked into Texas A&M, like, here I am. Like, I've arrived, world. And what I felt in that moment at the end of my junior year, 1 year left to go in college, is I felt washed up and I felt deflated. Because by that point, I had morally and practically failed. You see, I had come to Texas A&M and I had placed all of my hope in this one master's program to provide me the success I wanted in life. And I applied and got rejected. That I campaigned here at Texas A&M to become a Yell leader. And I wasn't elected. I faced public humiliation. I was rejected for that. That I dated a girl, an amazing girl, and I ruined that relationship. And though she was amazing, she was also my best friend's sister. Like, I put myself in positions where ultimately I had experienced more adversity than popularity or prosperity. Everything I came seeking, I did not find. And I remember, like, as I sat across my counselor at the business school, I remember looking at him and I remember saying, man, like I came into school with these visions of what my life would be like. I had all these aspirations, all of these dreams, but all of it has run out. Like, I chased after all of these things and they have all been so fleeting. I didn't find what I thought I would find. Instead, I've found failure. I'm not the success I wanted to be. And now I don't know what to do. Like, I just need help. And I'll never forget what he said to me in that moment. He looked at me and he said, Kylen, every student is having this conversation because every student is having this realization. The difference is whether or not those students have the courage to admit it. And that brings us to the last point, that we succeed by admitting to God our every need. It says in verse 11, it says, my son, do not despise the Lord's discipline or be weary of his reproof, for the Lord reproves him whom he loves, as a father the son in whom he delights. Like, our lives will not be perfect. Like, despite our best efforts, we will not succeed at all times and in all ways. But that's the beauty of this verse, that when we go wayward, that when we mess up, that when we need correction, God steps in and he says, hey, I'm happy to do that. That when we get off track, he puts us back on track. Is it because he's a disappointed disciplinarian, like that we shouldn't be messing up, like I've given you clear enough rules and you should be following those? No, it says, no, he disciplines us because the Lord reproves him whom he loves, as a father does to the son in whom he delights. That when we face adversity, we have a loving, gracious, heavenly father, a good father who is working in the face of our failure. What role do we play in it? We don't play much of one. We just don't need to despise his discipline. We don't need to reject his reproof. We need to be willing to admit, God, though I want to succeed, I'm a failure. I need your help. I've messed up and I need you to drag me out of it. I need you to put me back on solid ground. I need you to put me back on the right path, the path to life. That's our role in all of this. So how can we have confidence that when we admit our needs, God will come rushing in to meet them? Because it says in the Bible, it says in Philippians that he will supply our every need in Christ Jesus. And he has. That though we imperfectly fulfill this proverb, Jesus Christ himself has perfectly fulfilled it. That Jesus, he came into the world and he successfully committed his whole heart to God. That never once did he waver. He was faithful to the very end. That he stepped into our world and he submitted to God his entire life. It says that he did not come to be served, but to serve and to be a ransom for many. He didn't come being heralded as the king as he deserved. He came in the form of a servant, lower than how any of us would expect of ourselves. And then he came not admitting his own need. He came admitting ours. That he stood before the Father and he said, God, they need me. But they can't bring themselves back into right relationship with you. They need me to come and pave the way. And so for all of their sin, for all of their trespasses, all of the judgment that is due them, God, lay it upon me. Give it to me. I'll take it. I'll take the hit. It says in Isaiah 53 that upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace. That word chastise is the same word as discipline in this verse, that he bore our discipline. He bore our chastisement to what? To bring us peace. And in doing so, he's made way for us to have greater success than we could have ever had apart from him. I'm not talking about material success. No. I'm talking about the success of being perfectly united to our maker, to our king. And so in the words of Coach Taylor, clear eyes, full hearts can't lose. That if we see God clearly and if we love God fully, we cannot fail because Jesus has already succeeded for us.